Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, what we're going to talk about is tipping. Now, I know for some of you, you're like, oh, why are we talking about tipping? I mean, I tip this person, I tip that person. But if we're being real, some of us probably don't tip as much as we probably should. Myself included. I came to this topic because of a couple of things. I was listening to my homegirl Autumn the Aries' podcast. Shout out to Autumn. I know she's listening. She was talking about a recent experience she had at a restaurant, and she was talking about how horrible the service was. And I found it interesting that she said at the end of her experience at the restaurant that she did leave a tip. And then like right after that, I started thinking about an article that I'd read a couple of weeks ago about former NFL receiver Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco, whatever you call him, or whatever he calls himself these days. Anyway, Chad is a notorious huge tip guy. He recently went to James Harden's restaurant, and the bill was $107, and he left a $1,300 tip. And he posted it on his Twitter and retweeted it or whatever. And, someone asked him about it, and he said, quote, "It's just something that I always do, regardless of where I am, regardless of what restaurant or the service. I always take care of those who are serving me." Close quote. Chad has also, made news here recently because he went to IHOP. And the bill was $33, and he left a $1,000 tip. $1,000. He went to a restaurant in Florida, and he was, I guess, found himself being generous. And what he did was he left a tip of $1,000, and at the bottom of the receipt he said, quote, "Congrats on the reopening. Sorry about the pandemic. Hope this helps. I love you." Close quote. And I mean, that is something special. I can't say that I would do that. I mean, Chad has millions of dollars from his days of playing in the NFL. So, he can give away his quote unquote own stimulus checks. He has the capacity to do that. Me, on the other hand, not quite. But I wanted to get on here and talk about, tipping or what have you, because I guess, like I said, Autumn's conversation and then, reading these stories about Chad made me think about, tipping and some of the things that surrounds tipping. So I guess the biggest question is, how much should you tip? It really depends. Most people aren't going to tip as much as Chad did, dropping $1,000 here or $1,000 there. I mean, hell, he went to, what was it, Turkey Leg Hut in Houston, and the bill was $4.50, and he left $1,000 tip. So it just depends. So I'm just going to give you a couple of rule of thumbs. And this is just based on some research that I did. At restaurants, generally speaking, at a wait staff, if you're being waited on at a sit-down restaurant, you should tip 20% of the pre-tax bill. Nothing less than 15%. And then with takeout, there's some gray area there, but I'll come back to that in a second. At hotels, if the hotel porter is toting your bags, tip them $2 to $3. Room service, depending on where you stay, room service is normally a gratuity that's included in the bill, but they encourage you to pay, to tip 10% on top of that to the wait staff. And that goes for people who are, cleaning the rooms and, bringing you towels and stuff like that. And again, it just depends on where you stay. I mean, like if you stay at the Motel 6, all they're probably going to do is leave the light on for you. But if you stay someplace else, you might want to tip your housekeeping. If you're traveling, cruise ships, I've never been on a cruise ship, never will go on a cruise ship. But tipping on cruise ships usually, vary from, I guess, different lines to lines. If you're being picked up at the airport by a shuttle bus driver, $3 to $5. Catching a limo, 10 to 20% of the fare. Same for taxis, and the same for Uber, because there was at one point in time, there wasn't Uber and Lyft, these ride sharing services. It was just you catch a taxi, or you had to do whatever you could to get wherever you're trying to go. Bartenders. Generally speaking, it says you should tip your bartender $20 an hour. Okay. Bathroom attendant. $2 each time that you go to the bathroom. Now, I have a huge issue with bathroom attendants, but I'll probably touch on that a little later. So yeah, those are just some of the places and people. Oh, let me not forget salons. Your manicurists, for those of you who get manicures, mani-pedis, 20 to 25%. Your hairstylist or your barber, 20 to 25%. Spa services, 20 to 25%. I guess so. My first question is, like I said, I was thinking about, what happened with Autumn, and she was talking about how horrible the service was, on the Lit Life podcast. Make sure that you check that out. My question is, have you ever not tipped your server? I can only think of one time, and I'm trying to remember the name of the restaurant that we went to. We went to a restaurant, and the service was it was bad, and I stopped short of being very rude or whatever to my wait staff when I'm at a restaurant, and the reason being is because they have your food. I don't want nobody spitting in my food. I don't want nobody putting hair in my food. I don't want nobody doing nothing to my food. So if you're going to act a fool, I would suggest you do that after you get your food, and I think, people, you got to remember, people are people. Sometimes the order's not going to be right. Sometimes it's not going to be as swift as you may like it. But I can only think of one time where we went to a restaurant, and I think the tip that I left was $1. I was just so put off by it. I mean, it was slow. There were people who came 30 minutes after us that got their food, and I just wasn't with it, man. I left them a tip, and I think I left a note, but I only left $1. I paid in cash, and so, it wasn't going to be a situation where they could steal my credit card number. I paid in cash, and I left $1 on the table. But yeah, it's not cool. It's not cool. I think you should always leave a tip, but I'm interested, as you're listening to this podcast, hit me up and let me know if you've ever been someplace where the service has been that bad to where you just refuse to leave a tip. I will say this much. Quite often when I go out to dinner, I'm with my wife, Sharice. And Sharice is funny to me. And we've been together. We've been married at the time of this recording 20 years, right? So we've dated 4 or 5 years before this. We've been together for a long time. I guess I'll just put it like that. But she is funny to me because at one point in college, when we were in college at South Carolina State University, she worked at a restaurant and she worked tables, so she got tips. So she's very sympathetic and empathetic about, people who, are wait staff and they earn tips or what have you. With that being said, she's also very critical. So like when the bill comes, I'm always paying the bill. So that's, it's no big deal. But the thing that's always interesting is like, I can see her mind working from the moment that we sit down until the moment that, food comes out and everything like that, and how many times they come back to check on us and all that stuff like that. She's calculating a tip in her head, and there's been plenty of times where where the service wasn't, I guess up to her standard. And she leaned over and said, "Hey, how much are you leaving for a tip? Don't you leave a lot?" Like she'd say something like that. And then I think there was once or twice she was like, don't leave a tip. But she knows, like, if she says, okay, I'm gonna just throw a number out. If she says, don't you leave more than a $10 tip, if she says $10, I'll leave $18 or $20. Like, she's always cutting it short because she is very, very hard when it comes to that. So she wants the service to be on point. And I also explain to her, like, you have to know your personnel. If you go to, let's say, Waffle House, I'm not saying that you should have bad service at Waffle House, but it's not the same as going to Morton's Steakhouse. You feel me? It's not the same. So I'm going to pay more at Morton's because I love a good steak, right? And so I'm paying for the dinner. I'm paying for the ambiance. I'm paying for the wine. I'm paying for the conversation. I'm paying for the experience. Waffle House, I'm just paying for an all-star. I'm just paying for an all-star and some coffee. And that's it. Like it's not that I'm expecting. Now, I don't want to be mistreated, but I also understand that, it's not going to be a whole bunch of rolling out of the red carpet at Waffle House. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, she's very hard on tips. I think my biggest thing is when I'm tipping, particularly at restaurants and stuff, just like anyone else, I want you to make sure that you get the order right. Right. I'll say this: at the time of this recording, we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. We're just now getting to the place, myself and my family, we're just now getting to the place now where we will go out and eat, and actually dine out. But for a large part of the pandemic, we would order takeout. So, I might order food from, let's say, Outback Steakhouse or Red Lobster, someplace like that, Applebee's. And I get it, right? It's we're in a pandemic. People are trying to, do what they can to make their money. And you want to make sure that you patronize these places so that they can stay in business. Not so much the chains, but, some of the little small mom and pop spots. Those are the ones that were hit hardest. Those are the ones that didn't get the PPP loans. So you want to patronize those, but at the same time, you want to make sure that your order is correct. I can count on both hands how many times I've gone to different places and gotten home and only to find out that something was missing. Go to Red Lobster, order a bunch of food. They don't have my shrimp scampi. Now I got to go back, or if I feel like going back, or I got to call them and say, hey, you left my shrimp scampi off. Take that off my bill, charge my credit card, my debit card, whatever card I use. And it's like that happened. I would say at least a half a dozen times. And I know what you're thinking. You probably should, you should check your order. But yeah, I should. But at the same time, get the order right. I mean, if I ordered, pork chops, I shouldn't have lamb chops. I mean, come on, man. And I mean, stuff like that happen. And I think, I understand that a lot of those businesses, particularly at the time that it happened, they weren't doing dine-in. So everything was call in, and it's a rush, and you got these people lined up outside to pick up their food or whatever the case may be. And I also understand that people are people. We're human. We make mistakes, but it's just very frustrating to drop, a couple of dollars on food, and you get your food and the order's not right, man. I'll put it like this. I almost expect that from fast food places, but I don't expect that from, the restaurants that you would, stop in and eat at. Like I said, an Applebee's or an Outback or Red Lobster, someplace like that. Even the mom and pop places, I would expect that from fast food. I don't expect you to get my order right at McDonald's. I mean, not that I go to McDonald's, but I mean I do, but I only eat the fries at McDonald's. But yeah, but you know who doesn't get your orders wrong? Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A never gets anything wrong. I mean, regardless of how you feel about Chick-fil-A, man, service is always on point. But I digress. But yeah, I think during COVID, a lot of stuff when ordering takeout my orders have been wrong. So I just didn't get it. And, it left me very pissed off at times. So getting back to tipping, again, who do I tip? I don't take Ubers or Lyfts, so you can scratch them off the list. I've only been in 2 Ubers. They were cool. I did tip them, but I'm not someone that, normally takes an Uber. My barber. Do I tip my barber? Yeah, I tip him. I throw him a couple of dollars. Like, my haircut is $20, so I throw him $5 on top of that. And I went for a while with, just cutting my own hair because I wasn't trying to go in a barbershop at all. I wasn't trying to go in a barbershop at all. And I can cut my own hair. It's just, it's more of a convenience thing. My boys, they go to the barbershop, weekly. But me, I'll go to the barbershop, but my hair doesn't grow as much or as fast as it used to. So, it just depends on how I feel. If I feel lazy, I won't cut it, and I'll just, go to the barbershop. And, but I normally tip my barber. I don't tip in the hotel, and I probably should. I don't, I'm trying to think, man. I know that I've been places with my wife, and she's left a tip. And I'm almost embarrassed to say this. I can't remember ever leaving a tip at a hotel for the wait staff or the housekeeping. And I've been in a few hotels. Damn, I'm ashamed to say that. My bad, y'all. I'll do better. Let's see. DJs. No, I do recall when I was younger, one time, me and my teammates, we were in Magic City in Atlanta. And this was before I moved to the city of Atlanta. Obviously, I was still in college at South Carolina State University. And me and my teammates went to Magic City. And the DJ said, he said something like, make sure you tip your servers, tip your waitress, tip your dancer, tip your DJ. And a dude really got up from the table and walked over and gave the DJ like $5. And I found that to be extremely weird. I'm like, why are you tipping the DJ? He's supposed to be spinning music. Tell me, you guys tell me, have you ever tipped? I've never, and I know DJs. I'm close to quite a few DJs. But I've never felt compelled to tip a DJ. Now, tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, I could be wrong, but I've never tipped a DJ. And that was Magic City, man. That dude probably was making, I don't know, $300,000 a year. Not tipping you, man. But anyway, speaking of strip clubs, tipping your dancers, fellas and ladies, but this one's mostly for the fellas. A little FYI. Tip with your own money. Don't try to pick up ones from somebody else and stick them in her garter. Come on, man. I mean, come on, man. Don't do that. I've seen that done a lot, especially now, or, the phenomenon of making it rain. Guys just tossing ones. You toss a few ones and, maybe your homeboy tossed, 20 ones, right? And she's shaking, she's dancing, she's not really paying attention. And some of those ones end up under your seat. It's not your job to pick up those ones that aren't yours and slap her on the ass with them. You can't do that, man. Tip with your own money. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, and I mentioned it a little earlier. When you pick up carryout, do you leave a tip? I will say prior to COVID, I never left a tip. I mean, how hard is it for you to take if I call in and say, hey, I want, 50 lemon pepper wings wet with a box of fries and a drink. How hard is that for you to write that down, key it in the system, and then take my card when I come or take cash when I come into your establishment? Nah, you didn't earn a tip. All you did was just take an order. Yeah, prior to COVID, I never left a tip. Always zero. But since COVID, I understand that, things are different. So I'm proud of myself. I've actually been leaving a tip when I order carryout. Not a large tip, $2 or $3, but tip nonetheless. So you guys tell me, and I know this was a huge debate once on Twitter, back when Twitter was dope. When you order carryout, do you leave a tip? Like I said, prior to COVID, I didn't. And, it's a lot of places that probably could have used a couple of dollars, but I'm also always interested in the interaction when you order carryout, because, sometimes depending on where you are and where you're going, the people that answer the phone or the people that take the order, they can have a little attitude. Now, a tip is something that is gratuitous. That is on me. It is on me to extend my money to you for the service that you're providing, meaning that you're taking my order, you're getting my food, and you're packaging it and giving it to me, and I'm walking out the door. If you have a stink attitude, I'm not giving you no money. It's your job to be courteous. I don't have a problem. Speaking of gratuity, I don't have a problem with, restaurants that say, you have to have, if you have 5 or more people or 6 or more people, then the gratuity is included. I have no problem with that. The only thing that I ask is that the restaurant have that posted somewhere. Don't let me be 7 deep and then, pay for of the meal and add a tip, and then only to find out that the gratuity was already included, which has happened to me. We went out as a family, and I think we had someone else, because there's 6 of us between my wife and my 4 kids, and I think it might have been my mom, and I didn't have a problem with, but the thing about it was there was nothing on. I don't even think there was anything on the receipt that said the gratuity was included. So I threw a tip on top of a gratuity that was already, I think, 18%. It was a couple more dollars, but money is. I'm not gonna say money ain't a thing, but money, I don't trip off stuff like that. Like, it's just a couple of dollars. A couple of dollars not gonna kill most of us. But I just didn't like the fact that nowhere on the menu, nowhere in the establishment was it posted that, gratuity was included. And to be honest, the service wasn't I'll put it like this: the amount that I tipped really wasn't a good representation. That's what I'm tongue tied here. It wasn't a good representation of what the service was in the food. I mean, it was all right. It wasn't like that, So if they wanted to just take that 18% tip of as far as gratuity, I would have been cool with that. I wouldn't have given them any more money than that, but that's neither here nor there. But I just wanted to get on here and talk a little bit about tipping. Again, tip, because people do, especially now in these times, they need it. I will say this, make sure that you are tipping for the service that you're being provided. And if you're not being provided the service that you would like, definitely let them know, or don't go back. You have that option. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. $5,000.